Find somebody that you want to know from or learn from and then just stalk them. But then the follow-up really will separate you from everybody else. To be able to ask a question, do it, and then go back and say, hey, this helped, thank you. That coach will lean in and say, well, what else can I do for you? One of my favorite books that you've written several, is Be Mean About the Vision. Which I love. And now, having known you for a few years, I know how much that is such a passion of yours to keep leaders on the path of their original mission. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that book and kind of the idea behind it?
Yeah, of course, all my books have sort of rose up out of our coaching. Mm-hmm. And Dave Travis was one of the guys, longtime Leadership Network leader, and went on to be with Generis and has become a friend and peer. He said, Sean, you need to write this down. It kind of rose up out of our coaching. But the idea behind being mean about the vision is not giving permission for leaders to be mean to people. I know some mean pastors, but to be intentional. The word mean has another definition in the dictionary. The way we use it more often. I meant that as a compliment, or I didn't mean it that way. It implies intentionality. Mm-hmm. So being mean about the vision is being more intentional, more consistent, and not delegating vision to someone else on the team when you're the leader. It's the one thing you can't delegate. You've got to be the one, the champion, and oftentimes, the protector, of the vision for what God's given you. And of course, if you quit on it because it's hard and God told you to do it, that's the essence of missing the mark. So it means it's also got some of that stick-to-itiveness in there as well. Like, be mean about the vision. Finish what you started. And that's what I've always tried to do.
One of the things that I've appreciated about you is just how you have helped me understand the difference between a consultant and a coach, and then a counselor. And there's three different things there, right? There's a counselor that kind of helps you with one thing, coach that another does, and then a consultant helps another. And I think we often get these kind of mixed up, especially in the pastor world. There are pastors out there that they think, well, I don't need a coach because I've got a counselor. But there's a big difference. Would you define kind of the difference between those three and the little area in which you try to influence with coaching?
Yeah, it's really important, that you define coaching properly. What some are calling coaching out there today is really just content delivery.
Oh, yeah.
It's really training, which there's nothing wrong with this. This podcast is a great example of that. It's content delivery. But let's not call a podcast coaching.
Right.
Let's not call a phone call with 3,000 people on the line where it's one-way communication. An effective coach has a relationship with the player that he's coaching. And they're able to watch the player play and offer them feedback, which is a real big difference between a coach and, say, a consultant who drops in, writes up a report, offers some advice, and sort of leaves town, But a coach, I think, to have a true coaching relationship requires a relationship. And I've got to offer effective advice, I've got to be able to watch you play. It's one of the roles you and I've had, but then offer you feedback, sometimes permission, sometimes perspective, sometimes contextualization, sometimes accountability, along the way that a coach can provide. And of course, a lot of the guys that have been clients of ours have been with us for years. And the longer I walk with a leader, the better advice I give. Yeah. The more I know him, the more I know his wife, the more I know his team, so I give better advice. So that's why we've built Courage to Lead primarily around the device of one-on-one coaching. And I was told it couldn't be scaled, but we've actually proven all the skeptics and cynics wrong. We've done it. And so now I'm able to offer one-on-one coaching to lots of guys. I can't coach everybody one-on-one, but we have an arsenal of guys like you that I can offer up on a silver platter, who pastors a larger church than I ever did, by the way, who can offer, that one-on-one great perspective and accountability, to a leader out there.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I've benefited from the most is I've had a ton of consultants come in and give me advice and give me programs to run. And I've had counseling, which I greatly value, but having that
Yeah.
person in my life that, is more, it's different than just having a buddy. A buddy is great and you can commiserate with them. A coach is like, okay, I know you, here's what you need to do, and I'm going to call you next month and make sure you've done it. Seems to have has really benefited me in a long way. What about in your own life? Who are some of the coaches that have helped you along the way?
I'm glad you asked that because you've probably heard me say, like, if you're ever hearing Sean Lovejoy speak and you're like, oh, I've heard that somewhere before, I guarantee it. I've never had an original thought. Everything I know, I learned from a great coach. And if you think about it, that's true for you. That's true for, everything you know, you learn from someone else. Mm-hmm. There's nothing new under the sun. And I've just had elite coaches in my life. I'm not name dropping. I've had close personal coaching relationships with people like Andy Stanley and like Sam Chan and like Rick Warren and like Ed Young Jr. even years ago. And every one of those people, like none of those people I wanted to be a copycat to. I didn't want to be them when I grew up, but I learned something from every single one of them. Larry Osborne's another one came to mind. And people have asked me like, well, how in the world did you get in a coaching relationship with those guys? I stalked them in the name of Jesus. I finagled my way into an event where they were and stalked. I waited in line and I shook hands and I asked them, could I buy you a cup of coffee? Could I meet with you after this session? Do you have any time at this conference I could meet with you? And I gained rapport and I built trust. And I tell guys, if you're going to have coaches, swing for the fence, man. Swing for the fence, And I was able to meet with those guys one-on-one because I asked, and because I always came back to the table and I said, hey, just so you know, because here's what a coach wants to know. Is this a waste of my time, which is a more precious commodity than money? Or are they actually going to go put into place anything that I suggest? Mm-hmm. So I would wrap around the second conversation. I say, hey, Larry Osborne, just so you know, let me tell you what I did following up from our last, I actually went and I released that guy from our team. You told me by your observation was not up to snuff, was not on board with where we were going. He's like, wow, that's a good investment of my time. And it helps coaches, know that it's a good investment of their time to know that you'll execute, you'll have courageous conversations, you'll make courageous decisions along the way.
That's such a great word for people out there that are receiving any kind of coaching. And I love that idea. Find somebody that you want to know from or learn from and then just stalk them. But then the follow-up really will separate you from everybody else.
Exactly.
Because everybody's got a question or they want to meet somebody or whatever, or get the selfie. But to be able to ask a question, do it, and then go back and say, hey, this helped, thank you. That coach will lean in and say, well, what else can I do for you? And it goes a long, long way.